guys, welcome back to a new video. I'm Stephanie Fisher. I'm a licensed counselor here in the state of Michigan, and I'm owner and operator of In Progress Counseling. Today we're going to use a muscle analogy to help point out the two different veins of therapy that are often happening. One of them is that cognition. How do I think about the world? What does my processing and reasoning look like? And that's happening in our mind, and that's happening in our prefrontal cortex. And then we have that emotional processing side. And emotional processing, some of it's in our amygdala, and when it's in our amygdala, it's usually, we'll use that kind of that fight or flight language, some of that trauma language. What we know about the amygdala is it's devoid of a lot of the functions of the prefrontal cortex. It's very primal, it's very reactive. And so we do a lot of work to get cognition into the prefrontal cortex. But what's interesting about that amygdala too is there's a lot of sensations, there's a lot of feeling, there's a lot of things that get trapped there that need expression in some way, shape, or form over time. And some of that is more of that emotional processing that happens, that felt sense, perceptions, things we can't necessarily quantify, but there's an experiential knowing of safety or a knowing of danger and threat, a knowing of a lack of safety. And so we have these two systems at play. One is cognition and one is that felt sense of emotions. And often a client will come in with a strong dominant side and maybe a side that's less developed. So I happen to be someone that is very cognitively strong. I orient the first time, and I've shared this before, the first time I went to therapy, my therapist said to me, "Hey, how long have you been living from here up?" And what she was in essence saying is you're oriented towards cognition and you're not connected to your felt experiences. And that would have been true at that point in time. I hadn't done a lot of trauma work in my own story. And so I was very detached. I knew facts and I knew information, but I didn't really have a felt grief. I didn't have a felt experience of how trauma had affected my story. And that's even some of the work I still have to do today because it's my less conditioned side. Some clients will come in and they're very emotionally in touch. And sometimes that's part of the pardon me, that some of what we're working with is sometimes that emotional appraisal is turned up even too high potentially. So every felt sensation means something, or every emotion presents as some type of factual experience. And so we have to tangle out, okay, what are the facts and how are you thinking about it? So thoughts and how are you feeling about it? They're different systems, and we've talked about that before. But using the language of often one of them might be highly developed and one of them might be underdeveloped, that rings true for a lot of clients. That rings true in my story as I'm allowed to walk with other clinicians that are in development, so counselors in training. Some come in with just an orientation in the world towards high cognition, and others are feelers. They come in with an orientation towards the world of just perceiving the world and feeling and experiencing it. Those are really good things. Right now I'm in a dynamic where I get to be a co-supervisor in a practicum class, and the lead instructor is a feeler. I am a thinker. Those two things, when they intersect, they're very powerful together, but they're very different systems that are strengths. So the instructor might say something that's really connected to the felt sense of what's happening in the room, and I'm asking, hey, what are you thinking about that though? Because I'm intrigued by that. I want to know your thought processes. It's very common to have one system overdeveloped and the other one is less developed. It doesn't mean underdeveloped. It doesn't mean it's immature. It just might not have the same strength. And so even as I'm walking alongside of students and we're trying to figure out how do I engage clients in their story, we look at, is one muscle much bigger than the other? And that would typically be true if one muscle has been flexed significantly more than the other. In my story, cognition has been flexed. I remember thinking deeply about things even back at ages, 8, 9, and 10. It's decades of overthinking things. Not a lot of decades yet of feeling things. And so that's some of the work I get to do now in my story. But does that apply in your story? Do you think your way through the world? Do you feel your way through the world? Are they well-balanced systems? Is one of them not dialed in yet, not yet trained to show up in the present moment and make sense of things? Those are really good questions to be asking. It's very common that one of them is overdeveloped, and if one is overdeveloped, the other one might be underdeveloped just because it's had less practice. It's not a problem. It just can give us some language about how we are experiencing things in the present.